Welcome everybody to another episode of Today's Combat with CCL Townsend. If you were at the last episode, if you listened to the last episode, welcome back. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Today is kind of similar to the last week's podcast, but instead of reviewing a show, we are going to be talking about our guest from the last episode, which is Charlie Taylor.
How's it going, guys?
All right, so we're going to be talking about a lot of things about Charlie here. Charlie is well known around this area for a lot of things, but there's like a really less known thing about him is that he does what is it?
A little bit of jiu-jitsu, a little bit of Muay Thai.
So the thing about Charlie is that I've known him ever since I was in third grade. Third grade, yeah. And we're now in 2024, so it's been a very, very long time since I've known Charlie. And we've gone through a lot, obviously. We've gone through a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of drama between each other, but I mean, that was little kid shit. Now we're fucking damn. He's fucking 18. I'll be 18 in a fucking month or two. So I mean, it's like you just gotta look at the timeline and shit, and just like see how much shit has changed in the past couple of years. But I mean, so Charlie, like, I do gotta ask, like, your jiu-jitsu, where's it located? What do you do? Who trains you? Like,
so we're in Future Fitness right now. There's some spots that we're looking at, potentially a move, maybe. But Jake is our head jiu-jitsu coach. We have a couple other guys who coach at YC for the wrestling team. Costa, he's not necessarily a coach. He helps out. But we have Josh, who's our Tuesdays and Thursdays. He's wrestler heavy. And then we have Ethan, who coaches mornings on Mondays and Fridays. He might have a MMA match coming up soon with one of the amateur promotions around here. That's what he's shooting for. But our main for jiu-jitsu is Jake. He trained at Empire, which I don't know if you know about them. You train at trainings out there over there. He trained for them for a little bit, 16 years. And then he went down to San Diego. San Diego's known as like the jiu-jitsu mecca. Like, that is a hub of jiu-jitsu. And he met a guy down there, Craig Baker from Victory MMA. And Craig was actually the guy who started Sublux, and it's kind of its own style, I guess. I don't necessarily know how to explain it, but he started Sublux, and when Jake went down there, I believe he was a purple belt or blue belt, and he got smashed by everybody down there because they knew how to leg lock and stuff like that. And leg locks are something that are very stigmatized in the world of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by a lot of people because they're just viewed as, honestly, I'm not sure why, but it seems like they're just viewed as like scary. Like, a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, like Jiu-Jitsu World League, they don't allow white belts to do leg locks because I guess they don't trust them enough, which, I mean, fair enough. Some white belts are idiots, and I can say I never knew what a leg lock was until I trained, but he went down to Sublux in San Diego. He trained with Craig for a long time. Jake's a brown belt right now. He trained down there. Then he came back up here and started up Subluxed at another location. And then recently, I want to say within the last year, was when we moved into Future Fitness. And that's when him and Mike, my Muay Thai coach, started business partners. And currently now there's Victory MMA down in San Diego, which is where the Sublux location down there is located at. And Jake's trained with a bunch of UFC fighters. He trained with Sean Strickland and stuff like that. But
wow. A lot of big time, main UFC people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I mean, you got to tell me, like, the whole transfer from going into, like, basically no training.
Yeah, no training
to straight up doing it.
Yeah.
Like, that had to be tough. So, like, how did you, like, adapt to it? How long did it really take you to get into the use of it? Like,
I mean, I didn't necessarily have to adapt too much. I mean, as soon as I started, I fell in love with it, and I was training 5 days a week when I didn't have work, and then I sustained a foot injury in Muay Thai, came back from that. I was in there every day, even with the boot on, just watching technique and stuff. Came back from that, hit the ground running, trained hard, and I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 months. How I learned about it was through one of my counselors at North at my high school. he told me about it because I was like, oh, I kind of miss grappling because I did a little bit of wrestling in 8th grade before COVID canceled the season. I never really got back into it, but I'm like, I want to try it out. So I went in there. They gave me a free trial day. Everybody gets one of those. Come in anytime. Monday there's a seminar, 5 to 8. And I got my trial day. I came in, did jiu-jitsu. I loved it, and I've been doing it ever since.
So you say you've been doing it for about 7-8 months.
Yeah.
If you were to put yourself like face to face with yourself before you joined it and yourself now, how do you think that would play out?
I would absolutely destroy myself, honestly, man. I mean, it's so... And I'm still extremely novice. I mean, there's guys in there that are just animals. There's this one guy, Hyro. He wrestled at 125 in high school, and if I showed you a picture of him, you wouldn't believe that. Because he's jacked. But, I mean, hell...
Like, how much does he weigh now?
He's probably close to 200.
Oh, do you have a photo of him?
I can show you one. Hang on. Yeah. Let me...
Yeah, and then you can just send it to me. And
let me just show you this guy. Hang on.
Yeah, let me...
So...
I'm very curious. Is he verified on... Oh, yeah, he is. I think you...
He wrestled at 125 in high school.
Yeah. And what's his name again?
Iro Chavez.
Iro Chavez?
Yeah. No, he's an absolute animal. I mean... maybe you might see him someday running across one of the bridges in the morning if you're up that early. But yeah.
What bridge? In 10th Street Bridge?
Either one of the bridges going to Yuba City or Linda.
Oh, wow. So, time? What's the routine? Does he get up
I don't know exactly. I always just see him on his story just running at early hours in the morning, probably 5 or 6. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, 5 or 6, it's early. It's...
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Because that's usually what I do on the weekdays. I'll get up around honestly 4:30 to 5.
Yeah.
Get to the gym, do what I gotta do on a day-to-day basis during the week. When I tell people that, they're like, "How are you getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym and all this stuff?" I'm like, you think I like doing it?
Nah.
I mean, I hate doing it.
Nobody likes getting up early, but you do it because you have to.
The first thing I do when I wake up is I'm just like, I don't want to fucking do this shit. The last thing I want to do is go to a fucking gym when I'm tired and I'm fucking wore out and I don't want to do shit. I just want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
No, and I won't lie. There's been times to where I succumb to it and I'm like, fuck, I'm staying in bed. But I want to say 98% of the time, I say, fuck you, bro. We're getting up and we're getting this shit done because there's no other way to get it done besides putting in the fucking work.
Yep.
And by you, I mean... This is one thing that I do have to admit about you, and I will say this: we've never there's been times that we've never seen eye to eye about much shit. Whether it's fucking politics, or whether it's fucking
1917,
the movie fucking 1917, still a shitty movie. By the way,
don't even get
still
me
a
started
shitty
with
movie.
That, man.
But I mean, we've never really seen eye to eye on a couple topics. But I will say this: the people that dog on you, and I mean. It's not even just returning the favor thing because you've said this to me before, but I'm just going to put credit where credit's due, and I've told many people this. If you put in the work, no matter how big you are, no matter how good you are at it, as long as you're putting in the work and you're at least trying and you're trying to improve, then you got to give credit where credit's due, and that's what got me the most frustrated a lot of the time when I first started out in boxing is people really hated on me, and I mean... Looking back at it, you can't really blame them.
Yeah, I mean,
because there's been a lot of things that I've done in this boxing journey to where it's kind of fucking hard to fucking take me seriously.
It's kind of been a little cringy, I won't lie. But once you actually started training at an actual gym, is I feel like that's when you garner a lot of respect because it's not just something that you're hitting the heavy bag. You're actually learning proper technique and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
And bringing back to what I asked you earlier, if I were to put me from when I first started, if we were to put me to when I boxed Nate Galindo in October of 2022 versus me in March 2024, I would probably send my old self to the hospital.
Yeah, I mean,
it's that's how much of a drastic change it was because it's I adapted so well to the sport and the techniques. And by the way, I want to make this completely clear for anybody listening. I don't consider myself perfect. Honestly, I doubt there is very, very slim amount of people that can perfect anything they do. Travis Kelce in fucking football. I heard, I don't remember who, but I remember seeing something saying about, no, it wasn't Travis Kelce. Fucking, what's his name? Patrick Mahomes, saying how he's already one of the GOATs and how he's perfected his craft and everything. I mean, you could argue. You could argue. But then again, look at some of his plays. Like, you gotta think outside the box here. Yeah. Same thing when it comes to combat sports. Like, people say John Jones. He is probably in the very slim percent of people that can perfect the craft. Mm-hmm. But then when you bring somebody's name up like Ilya Taporia, who just came to the UFC recently and beat Alexander Volkanovski, people are already trying to say that he's the featherweight GOAT. But then again, he's only really perfected his striking. He hasn't perfected everything in total that comes into the UFC. So you really gotta understand that nobody really is perfect in what they do until they really, really, really perfect it. I mean, it's very cliche, but you gotta understand, you can't perfect it until you fucking perfect it. You gotta put in the work to perfect your craft. It's not just a day-to-day basis thing. You gotta do this shit for years. Yeah. And then again, for you started, you said about 8 months ago.
7 or 8 months, give or take.
Jiu-jitsu. Then again, you got a long way to go. Of course you do. So do I. But everybody's got a long way to go unless you're fucking on your deathbed and you've done everything you've needed to do. So, honestly, you've come a long way from when we fucking started out in bet boxing, which we're going to talk about next. For those of you who don't know, Bet Boxing was my own boxing organization that started out as YouTube Junior Boxing. In 2000, I want to say 17 is when we started it, and we've had a number of fights ever since then. The first ever fight was me against Caden Goebel in 20. I think it was late. We started the process of YouTube Junior Boxing in 2017, but I don't think me and Caden actually fought until 2018. And boy, did I receive some fucking backlash from that first fight.
Yeah, man.
And then what really fucking set a lot of people off, a lot of actual people that enjoyed boxing around the time, because you got to remember, me and Charlie, we were very fucking little at the time. So we weren't trying to, we were middle schoolers. We weren't trying to fucking, we weren't trying to make this turn into something big.
We were middle schoolers with boxing gloves.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to put it. We were middle schoolers with boxing gloves that wanted to try something new. And we won't lie. I won't lie, specifically, a lot of it had to do with the Logan Paul and KSI fight. Now, I will say this. I don't give Logan Paul and KSI fight credit for me getting into boxing. Because I honestly, if you want me to be completely honest, I think the thing that got me into boxing was watching the Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fight. That's honestly what really got me into boxing. Because I remember my dad buying the pay-per-view and me just sitting there to watch it saying, I know Conor McGregor. I know Floyd Mayweather. I don't know what they've done. But I want to fucking watch him fight. And I watched him fight, and I thought it was the coolest fucking shit. Yeah. And then, I don't know if it was a little bit before or a little bit after, it was the Logan Paul and KSI fight. And then Logan Paul, I won't lie, I was a part of the Low gang, bro. I was a part of the Low gang back then, bro. And once I saw that, I was like, what would be so fucking cool if I bought a pair of boxing gloves and I boxed Caden G. And then it happened, and I won by split decision. And looking back at it, it's the dumbest shit I've seen in a very long fucking time. Yeah. But I didn't know that then. And I thought it was the coolest shit that I've seen in a very long fucking time. And then it evolved. And then that's where Charlie got into it, is when we did a
tag team.
We did a YouTube Junior, we called it the Tag Team Cup, which was basically a tournament of tag team boxing matches. Which, by the way, I've seen that KSI's little boxing organization started doing that. I just want to mention, we started it. We started tag team boxing way before Misfits boxing was even a fucking thing. I just want to make that clear. And I don't support it. I think it's fucking stupid. Yeah. I think that's how people get hurt in the sport, and I don't support it. I just want to make that clear. But I was fucking 12. I was fucking 12. I thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever.
Yeah, man.
But it was a fucking tag team tournament, and it was you and Cody Landis. Yeah. My only loss in the fucking bet boxing records. And it was you and Cody Landis versus Jace Kendrick and Israel Stewart. Yeah. And then there was there was me and Brian Halleck as a tag team, and there was another team that was supposed to show up that day. I remember, and they never did. It was Tony Garcia.
Oh yeah, Tony.
It was Tony Garcia and Xavier Jackson. They were gonna be a tag team, but they never showed up at last minute. So basically, me and Brian just said, "Fuck it, we're the better overall team. Let's just go straight to the finals." So that fight saw you and Cody lose.
Yeah.
To Jason Israel, tell me your thoughts on what when you were about to get into that fight. What was your overall?
Dude, I don't even remember what I was thinking going into that shit, man. I don't remember half of the stuff that happened going into that. If I'm being quite honest with you, I mean, I just remember I picked Cody because that was my boy, and but I mean, it was it was interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I mean. Y'all lost.
Yeah,
and then the finals was me and Brian Halleck versus Jace Kendrick, Israel Stewart, and they were fucking terrified of Brian.
Brian was a big dude even in middle school. I mean, he was built like RJ, dude. I mean, he was fucking big.
He was a big dude for a fucking, what was he at the time, a fucking sixth grader?
He was a grade below us, too.
So he was like a sixth grader while we were in seventh grade doing this.
I mean...
So that's actually fucking crazy, and I don't blame them for being scared of him, because, fuck, that's why he was my tag team partner. I didn't want him on any other fucking team. So, I mean, that was probably the dumbest thing we did out of all the bet boxing, but I think I honestly want to say I think the most real that we ever got with bet boxing is when we rented out Hit Squad to do those events.
And that's probably my most notorious one.
That's the most Gabe honestly not notorious. I think it's the most well-known one out of any bet boxing fight, and I have to give 100%. You that. I think out of every bet boxing fight we've done from when we started with KTV versus Caden G in 2017 to 2018 to the last bet boxing fight, which was, I want to say it was me versus Giovanni Herrera, and I want to say that was the last bet boxing fight. Actually, no, it wasn't. Though I scratched that. The last bet boxing fight was me and Kevin Estrada and Anthony Vasquez and Gabe Stratos. That was the final bet boxing fight that we've ever done, and it will be the final one that we ever do. And I want to say from the first one to the final one, the most well-known one that still gets talked about to this day is Two Punch Man.
Yeah, man.
Gabe Jacobo versus Charlie Taylor in the main event, and I want to say like it was a.
It was sad.
It was sad. It was sad. Like I want to say, like, what was your mindset going into it? And then
I mean, honestly,
what was your mindset?
That dude hits like a fucking truck. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't expect him to go that hard. Now,
so for those who don't know, let me just give a basic rundown of what happened in the fight. The fight started with Charlie and Gabe going face to face. Gabe did his fist motion. He showed his dominance, barefoot, by the way, in the boxing ring. And he walked up, and he went, boom, set the jab, and right to the temple, hit a cross right to Charlie's temple, and Charlie was out on the ropes.
Yeah, I threw in the towel. I was like, yeah, man, fuck this.
So Charlie was out on the ropes, and it's still I will show a clip of it. This was still the most well-known knockout and fight that we've ever done in bet boxing. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. What happened after the fight ended? What was like your exact mindset once you hit the ropes and once you were able to comprehend what just happened?
I was like, man, fuck this. This shit sucks. Fuck that.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I want to do this shit again. But I feel like, honestly, if I would have, and I know, like, you could say this about any of the events, like, if I would have known at least a little bit more about boxing, and I think myself now, and I know my boxing still isn't that great, but my boxing's miles ahead of where it was then. I think I'd have a better chance because I know how to take a punch. Because when I first started, like, sparring in Muay Thai and stuff, I didn't know how to take a punch. I was, I'd flinch back and stuff, which it's natural for you to do. But, you got to get it ingrained into your head that, like, hey, it's okay to get punched. Just don't let it happen too much, you know? And I feel like, I mean, that dude, he hits hard, but I think I could at least now weather it. But, I mean, that's still, the most notorious thing I've done and what a lot of people know bet boxing for is that fight.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, picture it now. Let's just say it's March 2024. You and Gabe are doing the same fight. Let's just say that fight never happened.
Yeah.
And it's you and Gabe cross from each other in the ring. Gabe does his fist motion, and he shows the dominance. What do you think happens in that 3-round fight?
In that 3-round fight, I think I don't know if it goes as poorly as it did. I'm not going to say that I win, because I don't know if I'd win or lose. You can't determine that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like I have a lot better of a chance that I would now than I did then. I mean, my stamina is a lot much better. I've got a lot more endurance, and I think I'd do a lot better. But, I mean, who knows? It goes to decision. I knock him out. He knocks me out. Nobody knows, My boxing knowledge is a lot better, though. I know, 3 of the body, all that kind of stuff. I know a lot more of the fundamentals than I did back then, and I think I'd perform much better.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I feel like the fight probably wouldn't go as bad.
Not nearly as
bad.
As
it did. And when you guys, I want to say it was 2021 when that fight happened, so about almost 3 years ago at this point. And I honestly think that you now versus Gabe now, you would have a slight advantage when it comes to stamina.
Yeah.
Now, Gabe's my boy. We barely talk anymore, but I will say Gabe's always been my boy.
Yeah.
And he always still shows support for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not dogging on Gabe. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I'm not dogging on Gabe. But I feel like you would have an advantage going into it with, your training and everything you've been doing. But then again, the power from
Gabe's
is
power.
fucking...
I mean, dude, he hits like a
hard.
Monster,
he hits like a fucking truck. Like, I felt a punch from Gabe. That shit hurts. But, like, another thing about bet boxing is that there's been a number, at least 20 fights that have never fell through. Because you got to realize we were not a professional organization. We didn't have the proper things to make sure that these fights could happen. We can't fucking make people sign contracts and be like, if you don't show up,
sign the contract, big boy. Sign the contract.
Like, we can't be like, if you don't show up, we gonna get some money from you. Like, we can't do that shit because we don't have the actual legal propagations to fucking do that shit.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of dumb teenagers.
Yeah, we were just a bunch of dumb kids. But there were a lot of fights that fell through, and one of those fights was actually me versus Charlie, and it was supposed to be a 2-fight. I was supposed to be fighting twice. The kickoff fight was going to be me versus Charlie, and then the main event was going to be me versus Nate Galindo. Me versus Nate Galindo happened, and I just want to. That's all I gotta say. There's a reason that fool moved out to San Diego, and that's still beef. I will say that. That's still beef, and I will say that fucking proudly, and I will say that fucking publicly. Like, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. That's still beef.
Yeah, man.
But, like, me versus Nate Galindo actually happened, but the fight that fell through was me versus Charlie, and at the time, me and Charlie were the closest fucking weight range that we've ever been in our whole fucking lives.
Yeah, man.
Even since 3rd grade, we were at the closest weight range we've ever been. Charlie was sitting at, like, 240, 250, and I was sitting at 210.
Yeah.
So compare and contrast the fucking weight. That's only if you were 240, that's only a 30-pound difference.
Yeah.
And we both agreed saying, you know what? Fuck that weight difference. Let's get this fucking fight done and let's do it.
I mean, honestly, I've never, like, the only time I'd really care, because for me at least, like, my weight difference hasn't really mattered with, like, say I went against somebody like Felix, which I know that's kind of a bad example because he's been training boxing forever, but it's like, it wouldn't really matter there because his technique's just so much better.
Yeah, I know. But the weight difference though, the weight difference is it plays a huge key in some things, but you did not care.
Yeah, no,
you did not care.
I didn't care.
You wanted to do the fight. I wanted to do the fight, and I think the main thing that started that is after you lost to Gabe. Yeah, I came to check up on you to see if you were good, and you fucking went off. You basically said, I didn't want to fucking do this shit, Chris. Yeah, man. You let me have it, and I think after that, when I heard it, I was like, okay, well,
you might get back.
Yeah, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I see where you're coming from, but then you also did say one more thing. You said that you wanted to box me next as you were sitting down, and I think that always lingered in my mind. Was like, should I box Charlie? Should I box him? Would people give me shit if I boxed him after what Gabe just did? And eventually, it came down to me. It was going to be me versus Charlie. And I'm not going to lie, I don't remember why the fight fell through.
I want to say just, like, some things for me came up, and I wasn't able to do it. And you had an ultimatum for that day, and it was, like, it was then or never.
I think I kind of remember that in the middle of my quote-unquote camp for the fight, Charlie basically told me that he wouldn't be able to make the date of the fight, and I either had a chance to do the fight before or not do the fight at all. And my whole thing was I really wanted to fight twice in a day. And looking back at it, that was probably a really dumb move if it did still happen, because it's not safe to fight twice in a day. That's too many times getting hit in the head, and it's not for your opponent, it's for yourself. So for me, I'd be getting hit in the head by Charlie, and then I would be getting hit in the head by Nate Galindo, which didn't really happen anyways. But, I mean...
like the good old UFC tournament days back in Randy Couture and Don Fry. Oh, my goodness.
Like, I didn't... Like, honestly, if you want me to be completely honest with you, Charlie, I thought you were going to be a walk in the park. I thought our fight was going to be...
that's fair.
Yeah,
honestly,
I thought our fight was going to be, if not the same, but a little less worse than Gabe's.
Yeah.
Now, I don't hit... Maybe now, but back then, I did not even hit relatively as hard as Gabe. I don't think there was anybody that could hit There was nobody Gabe in the bet boxing division that could hit as hard as the Two-Punch Man. And... I mean, why do you think he got the name? Like, he's got that power to be able to do that. But, I mean, like, looking back at it, that fight would have probably been more memorable than Gabe just because it's me versus you.
Yeah.
Looking at it now.
Just because of the name
Just because alone. Chris Townsend versus Charlie Taylor. Yeah. It would be, like, the one thing that people would not forget about. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy it fell through because if it did happen, it would probably... Because I had a fucking ego like a fucking maniac at the time. I thought I could beat fucking Floyd Mayweather at the time, bro. Like, I thought I was on fucking top of the world when in reality, I was at the lowest of the fucking low.
Yeah, man.
And I feel like me versus you would have led my ego into an absolute fucking riot, which is why I'm actually grateful that the fight didn't happen. But, I mean, I feel like that if me and you... happened, I feel like a lot of people would have watched. And
everybody would have. Everybody would have. Because I may not have been a great fighter, but I sold the fight like a motherfucker.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I sold that shit.
And another thing, too, is the fights, when we rented out Hit Squad, it wasn't free to do.
Yeah, no.
It was not free to do.
How much did you charge?
It cost money to rent out the gym. And then, in return to that, we said, you know what? We're going to charge an entry fee. We're going to make a snack bar. We're going to sell shit at the event. We had pizza, we had snacks, we had water, we had drinks, we had chips. We had, like, honestly, you got to give us props because for being the age we were, we put on a pretty decent fucking boxing event.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really made me fall in love with it more was seeing the idea of me doing this shit, which somebody told me before. Like, I think this was when I was doing the boxing events. Somebody said that they would rather see me as a boxing promoter than a boxer. Now, looking back at it now, I get that from past me.
Yeah.
From past me, I could see that version of me being a great fucking boxing promoter.
Yeah.
But a shitty boxer.
Yeah.
But now I think it's actually switched. And I think that I would actually be a better boxer now than a boxing promoter because promoting's a lot of work. You gotta do paperwork. You gotta sign things. You gotta publicize it with your fucking life.
Doing it legit is a lot of work. How we did it, it wasn't necessarily all legit and stuff.
It was work to do, but it wasn't a lot.
It wasn't nearly as much as you'd have to do if you were like an actual promoter. I mean, you gotta advertise it. You gotta find a space to host. You gotta... I mean, you got to get fighters on the card. You have to sign contracts with them. You have to, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a very complicated process when you're a boxing promoter, which honestly is why, like, I would never do it. I would rather sign with a promotion, which next year, 2025, we already got the promotion, but we just gotta, we'll save that for another day. But I'd rather sign with a promotion than start a promotion, because honestly, starting a promotion is honestly 10 times harder.
Yeah.
It really is, because you just dedicate yourself to the work and the craft, and you could just become a boxer, you could become a fighter, because I feel like everybody can, but not everybody will.
Yeah.
Everybody can, but not everybody will, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time and energy that you toll, and it's a toll on your body, and people don't really want to do it, which I get. But at the same time, I mean, it's pretty fucking cool if you do it, because then you get to learn all these fucking things that you get to see people do on TV and on fucking your phone and everything. And once you finally start doing it, you either fall in love with it or you don't.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the people that fell in love with it, and whether people still hate on me for doing it or not, and hate on you for doing your jiu-jitsu.
I mean, dude, I get a lot of shit from people, because people think it's like, people think it's like karate, and it's like, I can understand it with the gis and the belts and all that shit, and but I mean, it's really, karate, at least like when it comes to, all that stuff, it's not necessarily applicable in a fight. I mean, people will be like, oh, Wonder Boy, Stephen Thompson, like, dude, he's an athlete. I mean, he has trained his whole life. He comes from a karate base, sure, but I mean, he's trained his whole life, and there's a reason why he's a top-ranked fighter in MMA still. I mean, and then it's the same thing with Muay Thai. I mean, dude, some of those Muay Thai fighters, like Rod Tang, Superlek, I mean, those guys are fucking crazy. I mean, elbows, knees, everything, dog. And people, I feel like that's one of the really underrated martial arts.
All right, before we continue with the podcast, I want to mention one thing. We are currently working for sponsors for today's combat with CCL Townsend on Poddeck. So, if you're any sponsors that are listening to the podcast right now, please sponsor us, because we want to make this a very, 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 very high-watched podcast to deal with today's combat in martial arts, UFC, WWE, boxing, everything that you want to experience on this podcast will help a lot if we get a sponsor. Now, another thing I want to bring up is that this background, like in the last episode, if you're watching on YouTube, the background will not be the same. I'm currently working on new accessories to put in the back and everything. And this episode was really the first episode and second episode of the podcast was really last minute, and we are currently working on a better outlook for everything. So if you don't really like how the background looks, just stay tuned, because I promise you it's going to be worth the wait when we get everything that we want to make the podcast how the podcast should look like. Now, back to what we were talking about.
Muay Thai being one of the most underrated martial arts, at least in my opinion, out of like all of the, at least one of the ones that people use for MMA, because, and I think at least in the US, is because a lot of it happens in Thailand, and all of those fights happen at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Eastern time, 1 in the morning for us. But I mean, those guys are animals. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Rod Tang, Superlek, Takaro. I mean, that he just fought, I want to say, Superlek. His leg was just destroyed because leg kicks are insane, and people don't talk about them a lot because it's like, oh, leg kicks don't hurt. You take one good leg kick, you're done.
I mean, trust.
I mean, I'm sure people have been seeing the clip of John Jones leg kicking that one dude. He sent him to the hospital after 2. And I get it, John Jones. Any fighter who trains regularly,
all it takes is that one perfect kick that will fuck you up, especially if you know how to check kicks in an actual fight, like Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. When they fucking
broke his leg.
One of the most disgusting injuries I've ever seen in combat sports was from those past 2 injuries from Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman, and it's still gross to look at because the leg, how it inverts and the bone, and it's just
the shin.
It's really, that's why MMA is really dangerous when it takes a lot of toll on the body. More than boxing, because honestly, boxing is more of a mentally tolling, because you gotta wake up early, you gotta run, you gotta eat right, you gotta train your cardio, you gotta train your techniques, and it's basically a lot of things that take a toll on you mentally. Rather than MMA, when you learn to check kicks, you're gonna fuck up your leg in the process. Kicks. When you learn to grapple, you have a possibility, like John Jones when he tore his pectoral muscle.
That was a weird injury because he was it's just hyperextended, but that's something that wrestlers happen with a lot when they sprawl and stuff like that. But that was a weird injury, and that one definitely sucked. But when it comes to, like you were saying, mentally and physically, I think MMA takes a lot of toll on your body because, I mean, we've seen some brutal weight cuts from people, and I mean
Conor McGregor in the featherweight. He was a straight fucking skeleton, man.
Dude, some of the guys you'll see on a weight cut are terrible, and then there's people like Paddy Pimblett who just
is so
like
natural,
shit, and then he just
He's
cuts,
so natural.
He cuts all that weight, man, and it's
so
like,
natural.
I feel like one day that's just gonna come to bite him, man.
Mm-hmm. It's not healthy. It's really not. Just being fat, and then you just turn around, and then you're over here in a really good fucking shape to fight Tony Ferguson, and then literally almost 2 weeks later, he's back to the same size he was before the fight. Like, it's absolutely fucking insane. It's wild. It is. And, speaking of weight cuts, I do got to ask you, because I did, and you could back me up on this, I did straight up tell you, saying that you look like you've gotten a lot slimmer since the last time I saw you, because at the time it was a minute before I ever saw you, and I mean, you told me that it wasn't necessarily you cutting weight, it's more of you building muscle. Do you ever have plans to, like, go on a long-term cut to be able to slim down?
I mean, I'm just kind of like, whatever happens, I mean, I want to lose weight and stuff like that, and I think that's going to be a better option for me in the long run. But, I mean, as of now, I think I'm not going to be, if I lose weight, I'll be fine with it, because I'm about to start working, so I'm always going to be walking around and stuff, so the weight will just come off naturally. And then, as much as I've trained, it's really, I mean, I don't see myself fighting any sort of MMA match anytime soon. Who knows? It could happen, but I don't foresee it. I don't foresee myself doing it. Competing in jiu-jitsu, sure, but I'm not at that level yet. But I'd love to compete in jiu-jitsu at least once. I mean, some of those guys that compete are just insane. I mean, there's one guy who just signed up for our gym. He just came in and he teaches our gi classes on Wednesday. Jamie, I mean, guy is an animal. I mean, he's lanky. He's got that build, and it's just crazy. I mean, I'm not exactly sure who it was said this, but it's pretty funny. It's something that's like it's an inside joke, I guess you'd say, about jiu-jitsu. It's like how you get good at jiu-jitsu, how you build an incredible competitor is autism and steroids. And the dude said, we can get one, we haven't figured out how to give people the other. And honestly, I think it's hilarious, but it's true. I mean, you get any autistic dude, and I mean, you show them jiu-jitsu and they love it, that's all he's doing. It doesn't matter. He hyper focuses on that. And I mean, those guys are some of the greatest in the world. I mean, oh my God, I'm trying to think of the dude's name, but I mean, the one dude who's coming to mind right now, and I don't think he's autistic or anything, but I mean, he doesn't look like an athlete, but he's jacked. Mikey Musumeci from One. Dude, yep. I mean, you show that guy to anybody who doesn't know combat sports whatsoever, and you tell him he's a world champion,
but that guy could probably fuck you up. Like, did you see what he did?
Him and Sneeko?
Him and Bradley Martin. Like, dude. Bradley Martin is 6'3", 260 pounds.
Yeah.
And he went up against Mikey, who was fucking 100 and maybe not even 120, maybe a little above, maybe a little below. But he fucked him up.
Yeah, I mean,
like, how the fuck can that even be physically possible to be able to do that shit? That's what's so great about jiu-jitsu, is that
you don't necessarily have to be a stellar athlete. As long as your technique's there, you'll really be fine. And I mean, the athletic part sure helps a lot, because I mean, I've seen some people get in, like, being flexible helps, because if you've got really flexible shoulders, I mean, you're not getting Kimura'd. You're not getting Kimura'd. Nothing about that. But being flexible is probably the biggest thing, and just having that kind of flexibility. But it's not like you need a ton of flexibility. You just need to be able to have your limbs where they need to be at all times.
Exactly, yeah. So, back to what I was going to bring up. You kind of got a little brief into it just now, but you doing jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, like, what's your long-term goal? Because obviously it would be to have a professional fight, and obviously to make it big in it, but like, we got to, I mean, like, what is your honest long-term goal for doing this?
Dude, I just do it because I like it. Honestly, I just do it because I like it. If there's a fight in my future, there is. Whatever. It's cool. If I become a UFC fighter, that'd be dope. But it's not what I'm not like, oh, that's not my goal. I'm doing it because I like it. I enjoy it. It's fun to do. It's fun to spar people. I love sparring people and stuff like that. I just do it because of that. I don't do it because I'm interested in competing at a super high level. And if I ever get to that high level of, like, jiu-jitsu and competing at, like, ADCC and stuff like that, then but that's not my main goal. My main goal is just, it's a hobby. I enjoy it. I enjoy the people that I train with. I enjoy the community.
Yes. So basically, you're doing it because you love the sport, you love training it, and you love doing it. But you're not necessarily focusing on a pro future unless it comes your way.
Yeah, if I wake up one morning and I'm like, you know what, doing a fight would sound cool, there's requirements I'd have to meet and stuff like that before I could fight, and then I'd have to do a fight camp and stuff like that. And then it's especially like something with ADCC where they have them all over, like let's say I did one in Europe, I spend like $3,000, $4,000 to go and just lose in the first round. I mean, that, something like that would absolutely suck because you just spent $4,000 going to Europe for a tournament just for you to lose in the first round, and you're gonna feel like shit, honestly, because that would suck.
Not only is it a waste of money, it's like you kind of rush into something that could be great.
Yeah.
Which with me, like talking about like how I want to go pro and stuff, some people are saying, well, maybe you should do a couple amateur fights, and I agree. Which is why 100%. My goal is to get a couple of amateur fights before the end of the year. But if it doesn't happen, I do have a one-way ticket into a pro fight.
Yeah.
Which I'll talk about on a podcast very, very soon once I get more details. But right now, I mean, of course, I want to get some amateur fights in before I go straight to pro. But, I mean, going straight to pro is honestly the scariest thing because you're going up against somebody that's probably had a lot of amateur fights. And then it could basically be unpredictable and you won't really know what to do.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's more about how good you are and how much you believe in yourself to do it. But if you have like the slightest hint of like, I probably shouldn't do it, then honestly you probably shouldn't do it because you're not 100% believing in yourself. Yeah. So honestly, I feel like you dedicate yourself to the work, you drop a couple pounds, you just like you cut down a little bit and you just basically shut out everything and you just nonstop train, you could get a pro fight. I honestly believe that. You just gotta.
Yeah, and if I were to do any kind of pro fight, it would be an MMA fight. I wouldn't do Muay Thai mainly because my striking is not nearly. I feel like my grappling's my strong suit, not necessarily my striking. I think my striking's decent, but it's not on the level that I feel like I would be. At least right now. Let's say right now, but maybe in the future. Who knows, But I feel like if I were to compete, like let's say, go to UFC, I'd stay in heavyweight division. I wouldn't want to be. I don't think I'd want to be a 2-division. I mean, obviously, anybody would love to be a 2-division champ and all that, but it's like I'd have to go down really from hard. 260, let's say 260 for heavyweight, down to like 210. I think light heavyweight is 205, 210, and that's kind of like that's something that would take somebody a couple years to. I mean, maybe not a couple years, but like if you really are determined, a year
for sure, to get down to that type of weight.
Unless you want to just absolutely kill yourself with a weight cut and for like 6 months. But I mean, 6 months, it's a long time. Although it may not seem like that on the UFC timeline because no champs fight unless you're Volk. I mean, you don't fight every 6 months. I mean, hell, it took Sean O'Malley almost a year to defend his belt. Yeah. I mean. Like, Volk defended his belt for this year was the first time since he didn't defend it against Makhachev. He went up against Makhachev. So, who was the last guy he fought before Topuria outside of Makhachev? I can't even remember.
It was a long time, which shows that, like, these UFC fighters are very inactive because, besides, unless you're Volk, of course.
Yeah, I mean.
They're very inactive because it's a very, very, very long and tough process to get prepared for a fight. Which is why when people decide they want to jump into something so quick, which people say a lot about myself, and I understand, but when people want to jump into something so quick, they don't really know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
But if you have your knowledge, and you have your technique, and you have your training, and you know exactly what you're going for, then go for it. But at the same time, you got to understand the risks. You got to understand the consequences and the discipline that you got to do to be able to get into that shape for a fight.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I just told you, you just stick to everything you want to do. Man. I could see you in a pro fight very, very soon. Not when I say soon, I'm not saying next week. It's Charlie Taylor versus fucking Derek Lewis in a fucking UFC Fight Night fucking main event. Man, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you dedicate yourself in a year or two, I could see you at a level to where you'll be ready for an amateur, and then maybe in another year or two after that, you'll definitely be able to go pro.
Man.
But it's definitely going to be a lot of work and a lot of time to put into the craft and be able to do everything that you could do and accumulate everything. Because not only are you going to have to work a lot on striking, grappling submissions, defense, offense, you have to do everything because MMA is one of the hardest sports to learn because there's multiple factors to it. With boxing, footwork, punches, head movement, and just basically discipline.
Yeah.
With MMA, it's all of those combined mixed with other factors.
There is essentially nowhere in MMA that you can't be punched in the face.
Yeah.
No matter you're always in the danger of getting punched in the face or elbowed or not necessarily kneed because that rule, but like you can pretty much get hit anywhere. There's no safe spot. In boxing, you clinch up, you're kind of fine. Or if you get knocked down, you get a 10 count, you're back up. But in MMA, I mean, you've got that split second to be like, he's about to dive on top of me. Or if you're in the clinch, there's a knee coming for my face, there's an elbow, you're out. I mean, and that's one of the underrated parts, I feel like, of the striking part in MMA is the clinch. Because, like, in Muay Thai, you see it a lot because it's essentially where that comes from. But in the clinch, like, a lot of people just get killed in there.
Yeah, a lot of people do. And honestly, Charlie, like I've said this about 3 or 4 times now, give it a couple years. When you just stick to the craft and you keep doing what you're doing, I could see you being a fucking monster, dude. So take everything people are saying about you and just turn it into fucking drive, and you fucking use that shit to turn yourself into the best self that you could possibly make. But honestly, guys, that is another great episode of today's Combat with CCL Townsend. Like I said earlier, we are working on a brand new fucking background. We're gonna have a lot of things back in, like a lot of accessories. You see the gloves, they're just here for aesthetic value, but there's gonna be a lot of things you guys can look forward to. And next week we got Rudy Prado, amateur wrestler, former boxer. I cannot wait to interview him so you guys could hear more about him, because honestly I feel like not enough people know about Rudy Prado, and I feel like a lot more should. And that will be next Sunday when we get that episode out. So, another great episode. Thank you, Charlie, once again for being on the show. And
thanks for having me.
This won't be the final time you guys see him here on Season 1. He will be with me to review UFC 300 in April, and I just can't wait for that.
Yeah.
And possibly, depending on if we have a guest pull out or if we have a slot just available, we might have Charlie on an episode to do a UFC 300 picks episode before we actually review the show, and maybe we can get a couple other people on that episode as well.
Yeah.
But once again, thank you, Charlie, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Another great episode, and deuces.